Hey, Tony Gaskins here. Hey, this is a men's healing course for men. Watch this in your free time. Now, I want to talk to you because one of the things I notice with men is a lot of times we don't take the time to heal and we bottle everything in. And for some men, from the age of 6 months, have been thumped in the head or punched in the chest and been told, hey, big boys don't cry. And so we live with that. And you go through life and you're holding everything in. And then for most of us, we go through periods to where it's some fights we get into, it's some fights we run away from, it's some things that we run from, it's some things that could have helped us mature and become a man that we avoid, that we skip, we overlook. It's times in our life that we act out, and we act out from insecurity, we act out from fear, we act out from pain, and we do things that we should have never done. A lot of times we're operating solely from fear. And so you have to look back over your life and you got to see the things that you did and what made you do those things. And in order to do that, you really have to get to the root. And when I say get to the root, you start to identify the pain points in your life. And by pain points, I mean the things in your life that hurt you. So it may be you were bullied. It may be your father left your mother. It may be your mother left you. It may be you were touched as a child. It may be you were overlooked. You were mistreated by friends and family. It may be someone was murdered or someone died. There's things in life that happen that maybe made you lose faith in God, lose faith in humanity, and you start to struggle through these things. And you put this wall up, you put this shell on, and you operate from those places. So really sit down as a man and look back over life and identify the pain points. And when you identify the pain point, write it down. If you don't like to write, then just say it in your head. Then identify how did that make you feel and what actions follow that feeling. So if your father left your mother and he wasn't in the home with you, how did that make you feel? Maybe it made you feel unloved or unwanted. And then how did that make you feel? Angry or sad? And then what actions came from that? You joined a gang, or you started messing around with girls, or you started bullying people. So take yourself through this process. And this pain point could be anywhere in anything. It's not just that example that I use, but you want to get to the root thing that hurt you the most, or things, because for some of us, it's several things. And then you want to identify the actions that stem from that root, that grew from that. So that way you can see where you are operating from and how this thing that hurt you, how it's showing up in the world. So if you never saw your mother loved purely and correctly by your father, then maybe the way you're acting out as an adult male is not loving women purely. And you don't really want a real connection with one woman because the man who is responsible for your life never had a real connection with the one woman that you truly love. But see, you have to identify that so then you can correct it. And if there's some pain from someone that you haven't forgiven for something they did to you, to someone you love, then this is where you have to find healing in your life. And you got to sit down and you got to start to write a letter of forgiveness. And if you don't write, then you speak it, this letter of forgiveness. And like the quote says, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. So you remember this that if you refuse to forgive, then that is a maximum security prison that you are placing yourself in. And the only thing you can try to do is try to cope. So that may be with drugs or some other form of addiction, and it takes you down this rabbit hole. And before you know it, you've lost yourself. It may be constantly hurting women or hurting other men, taking your pain out on people in your life, people who could love you or may want to love you or try to love you. You taking your pain out on them because of the unforgiveness in your heart. And so this is a step to healing as a man, really identifying what is hurting you, what you aren't addressing. Because if you don't admit that you feel it, then you can't heal it. Because pain, the sensory of pain, is a healing agent. So when you admit that you feel it, now your brain can start to do the work to start to heal those areas that you've been ignoring. But as long as you try to numb yourself to the pain of abandonment, the pain of abuse, the pain of loss through all these different drugs or medication, nothing ever changes, nothing gets better, and you stay in the same place. And you continue to hurt yourself, and you continue to hurt those who love you. And you're setting yourself up for failure, and eventually there's no coming back from it. So, hey, this Tony Gaskins, first little part of this series of men healing. God bless you. We'll talk soon. Hey, Tony Gaskins here. Now, the next step in men's healing is after you identify your pain points and you address those things and you start to work through those things and you give forgiveness, you seek forgiveness, you have to turn your pain into purpose. And what I mean by that is there's somewhere that you're hurting or someone who hurt you, and everything that you experienced, there are other people experiencing those things. So by giving your pain a purpose, it no longer can kill you because now you have a reason to live. Instead of self-destructing and destroying yourself through drugs, through promiscuity, through illegal activity, depression, all of these things, you give your pain a purpose. So you start to serve where you suffered at. So this can show up in a lot of different ways. One of the things I did is I wrote a book when I was 22 years old, and I decided I wanted to change my life. I wrote a book, and then I wrote another book. Today, I'm probably like 20 books in, and that has really helped me because it made the mistakes I made, it made them lessons. So then the mistakes were no longer in vain. You can start a nonprofit organization to help those if you were struggling and you were struggling with your identity. Maybe you felt unattractive, you felt unwanted, you felt overlooked, you felt mistreated, you felt down, degraded, talked about, whatever it was. And so that made you go and do something like sell drugs or rob stores or sleep around or get into something that's counterproductive. Well, there are young men who are struggling in that same exact area right now. And so what you're able to do with your nonprofit is you're able to, or your for-profit, your LLC, incorporation, whichever route you decide to go, you're able to serve that area. You're able to raise money, use a room at the library or the local community center and have meetups. Go to your old high school, middle school, elementary school, talk to the guidance counselor, create an application with her for students, have her give that application to certain mothers or fathers who their son is struggling and have them fill out that application. You pick a certain number of young men that you're going to work with. And now you go to the library, you ask them, can you have this particular room on Wednesdays from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.? You raise money from your dentist, from your doctor, from your friends who are doing well, and you take care of the snacks, you take care of the drinks, and you have a group discussion every Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. You continue to raise money. You get a 15-passenger van. Now you can pick those boys up from school. They don't have to walk to the library for the meeting. And you continue to build. You continue to build. You're going to meet someone who writes grants. They're going to get you a grant. Next thing you know, you could use this room at the library or the community center full time. Now you got your van. Now you have your 15 boys that you pick up after school. You bring them to the library, and every day you playing games, you're having discussions, you're doing homework. You get retired teachers to come and tutor. You get teachers who, need a couple extra dollars or want to volunteer to come and tutor. So now your group, you can't save everybody, but you're saving somebody. So at the age that you started selling drugs, the age that you started robbing, the age that you started doing the wrong thing, sleeping around, skipping school, dropped out of school, you go and you help that age. You serve that age so that they don't make the mistake that you made. And the same way that this video reaches you, your message will reach somebody else. And the people you help, their message will reach somebody else. So there are boxing trainers who've done prison time and they raise world champions. There are basketball coaches who have made bad choices and they're coaching a team and their players go on to be NBA All-Stars. So you can always turn your pain into purpose. And you don't have to continue to perpetuate the cycle and do the things that got you in trouble. You can make a change and you can do different. You can be different. And so don't just wallow in your pain. Don't try to smoke your pain away. Pop pills and gamble and sleep around, and those things won't remove your pain. It won't heal your pain. It just masks your pain. It numbs your pain momentarily and then it comes back. It's just a temporary thing and then it comes back. But when you shift into purpose, now your purpose starts to give back. Now you start to see the fruit of your labor. Now you start to see where you were allowed to suffer through what you suffered through because it would not kill you. But if this young man that you're serving had gone through what you went through, it would have killed him. But because of you, his life has changed. His life is saved. Hey, this is Tony Gaskins. Turn your pain into purpose. We'll talk. Hey, this is Tony Gaskins. Now, I'm shooting this course all at one time. I got to teach a Zoom class here soon, but I'm kind of just going through doing these videos. Off the top of my head, I don't have notes, so please forgive me if I leave a little something out, but I'm just doing this from the heart for the men who start to really seek and change and growth. Now, on step 3, what I would call this is establishing principle. And what you have to realize in this is that morals in the world, morals and values change, but principles don't change. Principles remain the same. So what that means is in 320 BC, before Christ, the same principle that says when you sow, you will reap, that same principle is standing today. But morals have changed. Values have changed. So as a man, what you have to do is you have to establish principle in your life. So these principles, they have to make sense to you. Here's an example. I'm 100% faithful to my wife at this stage of my life, and I have not always been a faithful man in my life. I've been a dog, I've been a womanizer, I've been a cheater. But when I established principle, I said I want to be 100% faithful to one woman, because in my heart, that will yield the greatest fruit in my life. And that is the most noble thing to do. Because does this human being want faithfulness? If the answer is yes, then I have to ask myself as a human, do I want faithfulness from her? The answer is yes. So if I want faithfulness from her, then it would only be right that I give her faithfulness. See, that's principle. So you have to stand on principle, and you have to create principles in every area of your life. The most important will be in your interpersonal relationships, your intimate relationships, and then also in your business life. Like I have several companies, but one of my companies, I produce online courses. Like this course I'm doing, this would be a paid course on TonyGaskins.academy.com. And I have a principle that if someone buys the course and they don't access the course, they don't go and get the material, and they write in and they ask for a refund, then I will issue them a refund, no questions asked, because they did not access the material. If they access the material, then I don't have to issue them a refund, especially when I see they access the key material like the textbook or the workbook. And so that's my principle. And I'm okay with that principle. And someone can say, well, hey, I didn't like it. And if they say they didn't like it, then I can give them a refund if I feel like it. But they accessed the course knowing full well before they went in what they were buying. So the question is, was there something you were promised in the course that was not delivered? And so that's my principle. So a principle in my relationship by being faithful, a principle in my business by being honest and operating with integrity, principle with my kids. So making sure that I don't miss big events and big days, birthdays. I don't miss holidays, that I'm home if at all possible. Sometimes men have a job to where you have to be at your job, even on your child's birthday. And that's not my case right now, at least. And so that's a principle. Having a principle that I'm not going to reward my sons unless they work. Unless they work hard in school, they work hard in their personality, their character, then that's when they are rewarded. They're not spoiled, they're not babied, they're not coddled. That's a principle. So as a man, what you have to do is you have to establish principles. So are you stealing? Are you a scam artist? Are you a stand-up guy? Do you gossip and backbite? Do you backstab? Do you lie? Do you cheat? Do you manipulate? Do you deceive? So these are things that we can get into and that we can end up doing wrong because we're trying to get ahead or we're trying to get over. We're trying to get over on our woman, or we're trying to get over on the system, or we're trying to get ahead in life, so we call it, but not understanding that if you take shortcuts, you'll be cut short. So you gotta take the long route. You gotta be honest about your dealings. And so getting to that place to where we can grow in every area of our life to be completely honest. To be completely honest with our children, with our wife, with our job, with our money, with our body, with our behind the scenes when no one is looking. one of the challenges that I live by is I pretend, which because it could very well be true, but I pretend that someone has my phone tapped, that someone is listening to my every conversation, that someone is watching me through my video camera whenever my phone is on. And when I'm in the bathroom by myself, when I'm in the room by myself, when I'm in a hotel by myself, anywhere when I'm by myself, I pretend that I'm being listened to. And I make sure that my darkness matches my light. I make sure that I'm living what I'm teaching, that I'm living authentically what I claim to represent in the public eye to the best of my ability. A, established principle. Hey, Tony Gaxer here. Now, another part of the men's healing course. Now, think about this. Be the example. Now, this is the hardest part. This is the hardest part. And as men, we fail at this often. But being the example, meaning being the man that you would want your son to be if you had a son or if you have a son. Being the type of man that you would want your daughter to marry if you had a daughter or if you have a daughter. Being the example. Being the type of man that you would want your mother to marry if your mother was married or is married. Being that man, being the brother that you would want, being the son that you would want, being the father that you would want, being the husband, being the example. And that's the hardest part. That is the hardest part. And we fail because of where we're operating from. So when you identify where you're operating from, sometimes you'll realize, oh, I'm operating from anger right now. I'm operating from fear right now. I'm operating from frustration right now. I'm operating from hate or self-hate right now. So we have to identify where we're operating from, because we could be mad at the way the world has treated us, and we can take that out on our son or our daughter, and we can talk to them in a way that we can never get those words back. We can never take those words back, but we actually just said what we said because of our anger and our frustration and our bitterness, not from love. So when you focus on being the example, and here's the thing, we have to understand that this is bigger than us as men, because you have to answer to your creator. You will have to answer to your children. When you die, it's going to be your wife and your children who eulogize you, who write your eulogy. What will they say? It's going to be hard for them to lie. They don't want to stand and lie over the dead and tell a lie in the church or wherever y'all are at. What will the people closest to you say about you when you're gone? Will your children say that you did everything in your power to protect, to provide, to be an example? Will your wife say, or the woman you're with, say that you were an amazing man behind closed doors, that you did not talk down to her, you did not put hands on her, you kept your word, you stood on your word, you were a man of your word, you were a man of integrity? Be the example. And this is something where everything comes full circle. This when you are healed. And when I say healed, we're never 100%, but you can be functional on a high level at 80% healed. And you can go to 85%, 90% healed, 95% healed. And you can change the world, 95% healed. We may never reach 100% because 100% may represent perfection. So in being honest and being real about it, you have to be diligently working on your healing. So think about this. And when you put all this together, you identify the pain points, you address them, you forgive, you ask for forgiveness, you write a letter of forgiveness, you speak forgiveness, you address that. You identify where you're acting out at and how and why you need to change those behaviors. You turn your pain into purpose. You start to give back into help. You stand on principle. So you live by a code, and not just a code of the streets or a code of just business or a code of in one area, but in every area of your life, you create a code that you can be proud of, that other people can on the outside looking in can look in and say, wow, okay, that's solid. That's a real deal. Like, I can respect that. And then you commit to being the example. And it's painful, but the reward is great, because the reward is peace. It's peace. You can sleep good at night. You don't have to be looking over your shoulder. You don't have to be worrying about things. It's peace. And I'm still growing in this same area. And I feel like we're all always growing. But the key is to never stop growing, because the day you stop growing is the day you start dying. The day that you settle and you get complacent, that's the day that you start to sink. And so you have to keep working in every area of your life and pursue perfection, even though it is not attainable. Because as the quote says, along the way, you will catch excellence. So do not settle for mediocrity, for being a mediocre man, for being a half decent man, for being an okay man. Do not settle and become functional in your dysfunction. Instead, evaluate that and uproot that dysfunction and make a 180 in your life, a complete change, and about face, and live a way that you can be proud of when you are dead and gone, that your legacy will live on, that your children will sing your name, sing your praises, your wife, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, because you stood on principle and you were a real person and you were the example and you never stopped growing. You never stopped getting better. Hey, this is Tony Gaskins. God bless you. We'll talk.